Today on Locked On Canadiens, I am declaring it illegal not to get hyped about this Montreal Canadiens team.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens, everybody. We want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day every day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for $50 off your first year. My name is Laura Saab, also known as The Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian, and we are hyped about this Montreal Canadiens team after Saturday night's win against the Florida Panthers.
If we could do the wave with two people, we would, but we unfortunately can't. The vibes at the Bell Center, Laura. Come on, like it's been forever since it felt like that in there. That was incredible.
This game had stakes. It had, and you know, it's all like we're talking about the mix and the wild card spot and all that, but I think the stakes were also just, can the Canadiens hang with a team like Florida, who is, you know, where nobody's arguing that the Canadiens are better than Florida, but they've now beat them twice, right?
Never trailed.
Exactly. Beat them twice convincingly too, even though Florida did come back and try, you know, to get back into the game late in that game. The Canadiens were able to stifle them. They were able to keep it together, and they played really, really well. And before I forget, we're debuting a new segment today called Why You're Wrong, and we'll get into that in our third segment. We have our weekly recap that we always do on our Monday show. That's in our second segment. But first, we're talking about the game a little bit. And there's like, what is there not to love about that game? Really, it's not like it was an easy game for the Canadiens to win, but they did so well.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway I have from this one was, outside of Montreal playing really just solid, mistake-free, simple hockey, was the opposite of that for the Florida Panthers. Two of the Canadiens' goals were directly off of Panthers giveaways, trying to clear the zone. You remember, for a long time, I was really focused on the giveaways stat. In this game, this giveaways were 25-9 for the Florida Panthers. That is not something that this Florida Panthers team should do. I know they're missing a lot of guys, but like one of those was Barkov. Like Barkov was coughing the puck up like that from his own defensive zone. And it's not like the Canadiens had absolute killers picking them off. The Dvorak goal was intercepted by David Actual Savard. Like that's not, we're not sending a Norris Trophy winning defenseman out there. It's David Savard, and give him credit. He picked that off, knew exactly what he wanted to do with it, and Dvorak got his stick on it for his 100th career goal, which he had been sitting on forever. And I will quote our good friend Scott Matla when he said that if you give up the 100th goal to Christian Dvorak, assisted by David Savard, you should actually be relegated. That's not something that a National Hockey League team should do. And then have the arena just break out into the wave. Like it felt like everybody in that arena knew not so much what was at stake, because that's still kind of up in the air whether or not they'll make the playoffs, but more so what they've seen this team turn into. Right? We are gone from the tank days. They're over. I'm not saying the rebuild is over. I'm not doing that Pierre Dorian garbage.
No, absolutely not.
But they are now in the process of becoming something.
Yes.
Right? It's happening right in front of us. And it's really special to see, because it's not like, Josh Anderson's been great, but it's not like him leading the way, or like Brendan Gallagher leading the way, who's also been great. Brendan Gallagher's been playing like a guy who wants to desperately make the playoffs again in his career. But it's Nick Suzuki, it's Cole Caulfield, it's Lane Hudson, it's Juraj Slafkovsky. It's the guys that we know are going to lead this team when it's time, leading them now. So it's very exciting to watch that play out against the reigning Stanley Cup champions. It was a really special night on Saturday watching that unfold.
And still one of the top teams in the NHL, by the way. It's not like, they won the Stanley Cup
No.
and then fell off a cliff, right? And I think that's really the key thing, is that all the people we're seeing driving this bus are people we know are going to be here in 2, 3, 4 years time, right? So it's not to say that the Canadians are perfect or they've worked it out, right? Like you said, the rebuild is not over. This team is still in the rebuild. They're just in another phase of it. And so I talked about this a little bit last week. I was getting really annoyed with people saying that this team has not improved. Like, what about this team are you seeing that is the same as like that team in 2022 that finished last? Like what commonalities are you seeing? They don't play the same way. The people who were having a hard time then are playing well now. They have a number 1 overall pick. They have a Patrik Laine. They have like another, they have Ivan Demidov coming. That team didn't have that, right?
No.
So all of this, Lane Hudson panned out. Like at that time, there wasn't even a sniff of Lane Hudson. We didn't even know who he was until Sebastian High told us about him. So,
Yeah.
You just you look at that, and when people say like the Habs aren't really improving, I really, really want to disagree with that. And I really want to caution against that kind of pessimism, because it's not going to be linear. Like progress is never linear. There are very few things that are just straight, a straight shot up. This is not going to be one of those things. There's going to be hiccups. We saw that even just before the Four Nations, like the wheels seem to be falling off, right?
Yeah.
So until the Canadians can avoid things like that, they're still a young team that's in a rebuild. That's it. But this is a different phase. And I think that's really key, is that this is where you're going to see the difference between the Montreal Canadiens and teams like Buffalo, right? And we always make that comparison, and it's so unfortunate. It makes me so sad to do that. But what about this team are you seeing? And you're saying it's not improved over when they started the rebuild. I don't get that. I don't understand. Like, if you're one of those people, please explain your reasoning to us.
Yeah, I think we have left that behind. And I don't think that we need to humor that conversation, to be honest. I just don't. I have many Marty-ism-esque lines on here. And one of them is watch the dang game. Watch the game. Yes. Oh, they're the deserve to win meter. Blah, high danger scoring chances. Blah. Like, I get it. But also just watch it with your eyes. A lot of times what you see with your eyes will validate the numbers. Yes, their expected goals aren't particularly great on most nights. At this point, like, I really don't care. Because this roster is still so young. They're going to add. They obviously have deficiencies. You know what else they have? More draft picks and prospects than almost any other team. So they're going to be able to address those by overpaying with those, which, by the way, we should get ready for that to happen and not be upset when they overpay for something, because they're going to just decide, hey, I need this. It's like going to the convenience store at 2:30 in the morning. And the only thing that's convenient about it is that it's open at 2:30 in the morning, because everything in there is like marked up twice as much as it usually would be. But it's 2:30 in the morning. I need this now. I'm going to get it. That's what that's going to be. We're going to have to just
$8 pack of gum.
Exactly. Your charging cable costs $20. It's like, well, okay, I need it now though. My phone's dead, right? Like, we're going to have to get used to that. They're going to overpay for stuff, and none of it's your money. So relax.
Yeah. And I think back to that game, right? So what I really liked about the Montreal Canadiens is that they did the thing that we loved watching them do during that cup run that they had. And that was finding little opportunities to capitalize on every mistake. And just, they didn't give up, right? And that was the thing for me, was that they just kept coming. They were relentless. And when they're more talented and more complete, that relentlessness is going to look like an unbeatable juggernaut. It doesn't look like that on Saturday night, but it looks like the kernels of that. It looks like the beginnings of that. And I just, I want to really quickly, because we were going to talk, about so many things, but I really just quickly want to talk about how lucky we are to have Lane Hudson in this market.
Dude, he's so good. 52nd point for Lane Hudson. He's now 13 away from passing Chris Chelios. That is becoming more and more realistic with every passing game, because he just keeps picking up points, and they're not empty calorie points. His point in this one was a primary assist on Laine's power play goal. Also in that category, Cole Caulfield is now 7 away from hitting 40. So there's our 2 small boy points updates.
Yes, they're very close, and we're going to keep watching that, obviously, along with very many other things. There's still quite a few games left, and we will continue to cover them. But for now, we are going to head into our next segment, which is our Habs weekly recap, which we do once a week, every Monday, and we're going to talk about the games that were and what that means for this Montreal Canadiens team, and that's coming up in just one moment. Eating healthy does not have to be complicated. With Factor, you get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, so you can fuel your body without the hassle of cooking. Factor meals arrive fresh, never frozen, and with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week, you can customize your menu to fit your goals, whether that's calorie smart, protein plus, keto, all kinds of stuff. The convenience of it is just so great because it keeps you on track with healthy, delicious meals. You don't have to do a lot of thinking, and you don't have to do any time-consuming prep. The Korean beef ball and creamy Parmesan chicken are some of my favorites. They taste homemade but take no effort. And Factor also offers you smoothies, breakfast, and snacks, so you always have something nutritious and ready to go. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. I'm going to say that again. Factor Podcast is the code, and the site is factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off. It is time for one of our regular segments, and don't go away because we will have a new segment debuting in the third segment of the show, third period of the show. But it is time for our weekly recap. We got a win. We got a weird, very, very strange overtime loss, and then we got a decisive win against arguably the best team that they played all week, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Panthers, while they're banged up, they are still what people consider to be the front runner for the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Montreal's 2-0 against them, and they've outscored them 7-1 in those 2 games. So, it's adding to the whole, belief in this team. As we're recording this, the Rangers are currently playing the Edmonton Oilers. There's 1:10 left, and the Oilers are up 3-1. So let's just argue that the Rangers have lost this game in the standings. That puts them at 72 points with 68 games played. That's a point above Montreal, but with 2 more games played. So the Rangers are obviously still in the driver's seat in that way because the Canadiens don't necessarily control their own destiny just yet. But that's a big gap for the Canadiens to close off on the New York Rangers and step into that final wild card spot. The Columbus Blue Jackets are kind of in free fall. The Detroit Red Wings won again on Sunday, so they're still hanging around. But you have the Rangers at 72, Montreal 71, Columbus and Detroit 70, Boston at 68. Those are really the only teams that I would consider to still be in it. Montreal's right in there and has just as good of a shot as anybody else after this week. One of the things I want to talk about this week is how I think every game that we saw him play, Joshua Waugh got better.
Yes.
It's not perfect yet. His game isn't totally there. We shouldn't expect it to be at this point. But especially in the Florida game, I thought his line clicked really, really well. And I think it's only a matter of time before they break it open, before they start to put some serious pressure and offense together. Tuesday against Ottawa would be an opportune time to do that, of course. But
Yes,
I
please.
think Waugh is putting it together. Do you agree on that respect?
Yeah, and I took a little flack from some very good friends of the show for saying that he played well when he was really just okay. But I think it goes to show how much his stock had kind of fallen, and I was really expecting nothing from him, right? And so when he wasn't actively bad, I was actively impressed. But I do think that there is a pressure on this moment for Joshua Waugh. Like there is, he does have a lot to prove. And so I think the first couple of games, maybe he wasn't as bold as we wanted him to be, but I think he's really figuring it out now. And it's the same with Owen Beck when he came up, right? The
Yeah.
first couple of games, it was like, go on, girl, give us nothing. And then, you know, and then he kind of figured it out. And now they both look like question marks for next year in that, like, what's going to happen out of training camp next year, right? We don't know if maybe they become bargaining chips in the offseason because, Kent Hughes loves his summer homework, summer
Yep.
school, whatever we're going to call it. But, assuming that they're both still here next year, like they are going to become part of some really tough decisions for the team come training camp.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's an option should the Canadiens choose to exploit it.
Mhm.
Especially with Owen Beck, I wonder if keeping um, if keeping Jake Evans kind of makes that a play that they could make. We're not advocating for the trading of Owen Beck, so to speak, but like he's
No.
the kind of player that maybe you could flip and get
Mhm.
a as part of a package for a serious impact player at the NHL level. But yeah, look, I think the Seattle game was tough. That was a tough watch. It's always tough when someone breaks history against your team, which is what the Seattle Kraken did. They scored the fastest overtime goal in NHL history against the Montreal Canadiens in 4 seconds. Um, that was a tough game. It was a tough game. It was this, but I think we also have to keep things in perspective. It was the second half of a back-to-back with travel, 3 hours away from their natural time zone. Like they kind of, I think retrospectively we can look back on it and say they earned the benefit of the doubt in that one. They were quite good for most of that game, but they ran out of gas, which is obvious. It's an obvious thing to happen in the second half of a back-to-back, whether it's 2 back-to-back games in Montreal or on completely on the other coast. I think we were pretty tough on them in the moment because I think we were cranky. We were up until, as we like to say, butt o'clock.
A million o'clock.
Yeah, it wasn't, you as a fan have the right to express yourself in that way, to be upset when they lose. We all
Yes.
were. But I think that Seattle game, grabbing a point in the second half of back-to-back, they took 3 of 4 there. They took 5 of 6 over the course of the week. Usually that game back home after a Western road trip is sometimes a letdown game. The Bell Center did
Mhm.
not allow that to happen, which was awesome.
You
But I
cannot
think
let
the
those
Canadiens
fans down.
no, but I think I think the Canadiens went into that game not wanting to let them down, right? I think the Canadiens
Right.
gave the people at the Bell Center a reason to be really excited, which is just awesome. Like, I'm just thinking about if this team were to make the playoffs this year, just how loud it is in that building on TV. I've never been lucky enough to go to a regular season game, let alone a playoff game at the Bell Center. But like on TV, it's loud. It's deafeningly loud. And I cannot wait to see if they can get there this year. Tuesday's game against Ottawa, I think, is going to feel like that. I think
Yeah.
that is the biggest game of the year so far.
It's a 4-point game, and they need to really definitively win. I mean, the last game they played against Ottawa was pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. It was we had a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah.
But Ottawa's like for the last couple of years, Ottawa's absolutely wiped the floor with them every single time, right? And obnoxiously so. So
Yep.
for me, it's not just about pride though. Like right now, we're talking about standings. We're talking about trying to like get a place, and Ottawa is now 6 points ahead of them, but they still have 2 games left against them, right?
Yep.
So you can close that gap.
Very
You can
easily if you pick up
really, really, yeah,
if you pick up 4 points against Ottawa in the next 4 games, or in the
yeah,
next 2 games against them, and maybe you don't give them any, you make up
yeah,
some serious ground on that team.
yes,
Um,
exactly.
yeah,
Um,
it's exciting. It's look, this is what we wanted, right? We knew that this team, it wasn't going to be easy for them to get in. They're not only playing meaningful games in March, they're playing like must-win games in March,
yeah,
which adds to the viewing experience, right? It's why we watch sports, is for these moments and to see who can come out on top. To see Cole Caulfield score a clutch goal, to see Patrik Laine do Patrik Laine things. Watching these guys rise to the moment is what's really going to be fun over the next little while. And when they don't, they're going to hear about it, right?
yeah.
Because that's like you said, there are stakes to these games and it matters that they perform. So it's really exciting that we get these instead of, I don't know, talking about how the fourth line played in a game where they lost 8-0, for the 7th time in a row, right? We don't have to worry about that anymore.
We're out of those. We're out of those ones. And we will have our weekly forecast that we do every Monday episode, every Tuesday episode, sorry, unless the games start on a Monday that week. And that's coming up obviously tomorrow. But coming up next, sorry, who was the player of the week for you?
Oh, it's a great question. What about you? Do you have one off the top of your head? Lane Hutson's an easy pick.
Yeah, I was gonna say Nick Suzuki.
Oh, fine.
Strongly leading.
Yeah, he's doing everything they need him to do.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so coming up next is a brand new segment that we are debuting that I'm not even 100% sure what it's about, but we're gonna do it. And it's called Why You're Wrong. So stick around so you'll find out why you're wrong about I don't even know what yet. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, and you know we've all got them right now. Whether I'm snacking at my desk on a road trip or I just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. You can make like a little castle with them or whatever. The fact, wonderful nutrition, Wonderful Pistachios is so nutritious, and it provides all 9 essential amino acids. They're so delicious, and they have so many good flavors. Grab and go, it's so easy. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on all kinds of little things, food delivery, ride shares, things like that. But now I budget much smarter and I save so much more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan your long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is also smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, we are debuting a new segment. Also, don't forget we have trivia at the end of every episode. But our new segment is called Why You're Wrong. What's this segment all about, Ian?
So I think it's I want to spend some time talking about some of the narratives and ideas that go around in this fan base that I disagree with and giving my point of view because
Okay.
I'm on this show. I'm allowed to do that.
Yes.
I have 2 today, Laura. Do you want to start with a player or do you want to start with officiating?
Let's do the player first.
Okay, the player. The player everyone's wrong about is easy. It's Patrik Laine. The guy had the flu this week, and
That's not allowed.
it's apparently not allowed to get sick and stay away from your coworkers and also not get them sick when the work they're doing is very important and they can't all afford to be sick at the same time. Doesn't that sound familiar? I think everyone has this player so wrong. I've seen a lot of prominent media members and other sorts of media talk about how he's not a fit for the culture. He's not the kind of guy you want in the locker room. And I just can't find myself to ever agree with that. I know I'm a big fan of Laine. I came into this show like factory set on being a big Laine fan. But the guy just has a talent that most players in this league would love to have in that wrist shot and that one timer. And the guys in the room seem to really like him. They've all really drawn to him. Whenever he scores, they are all over him. They're really excited to play with him. I don't know where this whole he's not a good fit for this culture thing came from. I don't know who started that, but they typically have no evidence to support it. They've just decided they don't like this one player who looks very nonchalant in everything that he does. It sucks to watch because I think you'd be hard pressed to find a player in the league who loves hockey as much as a guy like Patrik Laine, who the things that he went through last year are really difficult to quantify and talk about if you haven't been through that sort of thing, if you haven't dealt with, a mental illness of some kind. It's tough to put into perspective, and it's tough to understand unless you know somebody or you yourself has gone through it. For him to do all that, get all that done, come back to hockey, work really hard to get back because he was also recovering from a shoulder injury, get his knee blown out in a preseason game, and then work his rear end off to get back here and play again and do nothing but score goals on the power play. Guys, he's the third highest goal scorer on the team. He's played 38 games. Guys, I think we all owe this guy an apology. We all got to chill out. If he were to play all 82 games, he's on a 36 goal pace with a bad knee. That's wild. So I just think people have this guy all wrong. And it really bugs me when I read and hear the things that people say about this player, because it's all complete garbage that it's like what I said when Montreal first got Patrik Laine. You have your opinion set on him already. If you thought he was a locker room cancer and a diva coming into this, that's what you're going to think. He's not going to change your mind. Neither am I. But if you came into this with an open mind, you know this player rules. And that's where I will leave that, Laura.
And I just want to ask one question. How come the vibes in this locker room, the vibes surrounding this team are immaculate right now if he's such a locker room cancer?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't, there's never any evidence associated with it that he's actually a terrible guy to be around. They all
It's just
really
one
seem
guy
to
didn't like him and told the media, I think.
Yeah, sure. And that's going to follow him the rest of his career, which is really upsetting. After watching we know the locker room he came from in Winnipeg wasn't great. He came out and told everybody the one in Columbus wasn't great, much to Columbus's chagrin, to do that before a game against the Blue Jackets. That's my one criticism of the player. Maybe don't do that again. And I think he learned that lesson. I think he said as much that he wouldn't do it again. But yes, Patrik Laine, I hope he's here beyond his contract. I really like having this player here. He's got a skill that if you get rid of him, you're going to be trying to find, right? Everyone wants that guy, our guy that can do the things he does. So Patrik Laine, why you're wrong.
Why you're wrong. All right. We have some time for officiating.
Yeah, this one's less so officiating and more so the overturned goal.
Okay. Oh, okay.
New Hook's power play goal was taken off the board because Brendan Gallagher went into the blue paint on his own volition and made contact with Sergei Bobrovsky's stick. Bobrovsky dropped his stick. Everyone seemed to think that this was the wrong call to overturn this goal. I could not disagree more. Brendan Gallagher is going to draw that criticism whenever he gets near the paint, right? But he went into the blue paint. Nobody touched him on the way in. He went in entirely on his own. He made contact with the goalie's equipment. The goalie lost his equipment, and the guy scored. I know people are saying, like, well, that's not the spirit of the rule. The last thing you want is for the goaltender interference rule to become more subjective. That's the last thing you want. Because if you're looking at this going like, come on, you're saying it that way. But the guys in the war room in Toronto and guys like Chris Lee and Garrett Rank going, come on, they're going to see it much differently than you and I. So I was totally fine with that goal not counting. What were your thoughts on that goal?
It didn't end up mattering. That's the thing. Like, I feel like I would have been way more upset if it ended up like changing the final score. But he went in there of his own volition.
Yeah. If you get into the blue paint and nobody touched you, you're just looking for problems. Like that's the long and short of it. And Gallagher notes that. Like, that's the thing, is like
he lives there. Like, he should know.
Every year the league publishes videos and sends it to the players of like, this is what we're looking at for goalie interference. This is goalie interference. This is not. He watches them religioususly because it's kind of his job to do that. Yeah, he's probably half the clips. I found it very bizarre that we watched that and the fan base entirely went like, wow, that needs to count. Because flip it around. If that's Sam Bennett going into Sam Montembeault and Alex Barkov scores,
We
we're
would
all
be
losing
calling
our
for his
minds
head.
if that goal counts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would be calling for his head.
Yeah, and in my opinion, rightfully so. You shouldn't do that. So just stay out of the paint. That's why people are wrong. It's the paint. The goalie owns it. It's his. Just leave it alone.
Yeah, get out of his face. Or, get in his face from further away.
Yeah. Just don't do the Sean Avery where you turn around and wave the stick in front of their face. As funny as that was, that is against the rules now.
All right. It is time for trivia. Let's do that and leave these lovely people to the rest of their day.
Yeah, all right. Last question was based on the Florida Panthers. Who was the first player ever traded from the Florida Panthers to the Montreal Canadiens? We got a lot of different answers on this one, but only one of them is correct. Laura, do you know the answer?
The answer is Dominic Moore, but I can't take credit for it. I got it from the listener.
I know, it's just a good show mechanism to throw it to the co-host to answer the question. Yes, Dominic Moore traded to the Montreal Canadiens on February 11th, 2010. Played for 10 teams in his career, traded for a 2011 second-round pick, which was 47th overall, which became Matt Nieto, a guy who had a really long NHL career. He might even still be playing. I don't know where Matt Nieto's at. Super Rain had that right. Super Rain did mention that they're a new fan and they are researching these, and that is okay. Ultimately, the goal is to have you guys engaging with us. We've been holding the responses. Yeah, have fun. We've been holding the responses until later on in the day, so people have a chance to answer without the answer being spoiled. So, as far as I'm concerned, let it rip. That's it's always, we just want you guys to feel like you have engagement with the show and there's something fun to interact with.
And trivia is fun, but I think you said Matt Nieto's name wrong. You have to say Long Beach native.
Yes, Long Beach native Matt Nieto. How could I forget, Laura? That's incredible. What a pull. Man, that's so good. Okay, today's question. I have 3 players here, and I want you to tell me what these 3 players have in common. Guy Lapointe, Guy Carbonneau, and Jan Boulis. These 3 players have something in common. If you have the answer, put it in the comments, email it to us. We'll shout you out on the next episode of the show. Good luck.
Guy Lapointe, Guy Carbonneau, and Jan Boulis.
Correct.
Correct. All right, you guys heard him. That is our trivia question for the day, and you can leave it in the YouTube comments, but you can also email it to us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can also DM it to us on Twitter or on TikTok. And we are also on Bluesky, and all of those places you'll find us at Locked On Canadiens. Locked On Canadiens on Twitter, Instagram, Bluesky, TikTok. Actually, we're not posting on Twitter. Forget that. And Gmail. Sorry, it's a force of habit. I said it for like 5 years, right? And in the meantime, you can also find us wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Please subscribe. Please tell your friends. Please engage with the show so people will find it. It looks like we're in for a really fun March. Or I was going to say really fun last month, and I said March instead. Where there's 1 month left, literally 1 month left. It's the 16th, and so please make sure that you are subscribed to this podcast. And like I said, send us mailbag questions on all the channels I just mentioned. You'll find my co-host at Maybe It's Ian. You will find me at The Active Stick. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back tomorrow.